The Cincinnati Reds made a surprising trade that I think is a little bit better than it appears on the surface.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Reds. My name is Jeff Carr, and I'm a lifelong Cincinnati Reds fan. I've been doing this for 6 seasons now, hosting the Locked On Reds podcast on a daily basis. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day, and I aim to make Locked On Reds accessible for every single Reds fan. We're going to talk about the biggest thing on every Reds fan's mind. We're going to analyze and overreact to the daily motions of the ocean of the MLB season. And we're going to talk about some geeky stats as well. And it's trade deadline season, so we're talking trades, and the Reds made a trade. Frankie Montas is a Brewer? As odd as that seems, I think there's a very intriguing side to this deal, and I will break that down here on today's podcast. We'll also talk about how the roster moves with the new additions coming into Cincinnati, including the trade that happened earlier today, where Ty France became a Cincinnati Red. And the Reds won a ball game last night. They clobbered the Chicago Cubs. And we'll break down the most important performance, the most impressive performance from that game, because as much as the Reds scored, I think the most impressive performance came from the mound. That's all coming up on today's Locked On Reds podcast that is brought to you by Prize Picks. Check out the app today. Download the Prize Picks app and use promo code, all lowercase, LOCKEDONMLB to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Pick more or pick less. It's that easy. All right, we are going to pick up. I did a live show, and I found out that you have to hit the mute button. You have to unmute yourself so that people can hear you. We're going to pick up where I figured that out. Did Nick Krall not hit the unmute button until today? He makes 2 trades in one day. Ty France is a Red. Frankie Montas is a Brewer. Joey Wiemer, former UC Bearcat, is a Red. And right-handed relief pitcher who has major league experience for many, many years now, Jakob Junis, is a Red as well. Now, I find this weird because the first initial report that I had of this trade was Frankie Montas is a Brewer. And that absolutely ticked me off. How on earth do you go and you make a trade with your in-division rival? The Cincinnati Reds all this season have been chasing the Brewers. And quite frankly, they may be a little bit too far behind at this point. Like, I don't know what you guys are thinking, and I really appreciate you all jumping into the comment section here. But are the Reds done trying to go for the division? Because it feels like this officially says yes. And this officially pushes their focus, at least the front office focus, to next season. And that's actually kind of something I've been wanting them to do. I don't necessarily believe that Frankie Montas was going to be traded. You look at this season for him. He's been very up and down. He's had one really good start and one really bad start. And you really don't necessarily know when you're going to get one or the other. He's going to go into Coors Field and hold the Rockies to 1 hit. Nobody does that. Pitchers go to Coors Field to die. And then he's going to turn around his next start, come home against a lackluster lineup, and he's going to go barely 2 1/3 innings, and he's going to get pulled. So the fact that the Reds were able to get major league talent, not project prospects that are in low A that maybe make the major leagues in 5, 6, 7 years. No, they got Joey Wiemer, who, yes, he has struggled at the major league level, and he's looking for a change of scenery. But they got a Bearcat. Like, the story around him could be a lot of fun. Barely has made his major league debut. We're looking at a guy who could be like, a fun turnaround story. And you get Jakob Junis, who has multiple years of major league experience, and he has long relief experience, really kind of helps bolster this bullpen. Neither one of these guys are amazing players. Neither one of these guys, I think, were part of the Brewers' playoff plans. So that can tell you a little bit of something here. The Reds didn't go get a blockbuster. But what were they getting out of Frankie Montas for the rest of the year? He might have improved. We could have seen him maybe improve his ERA a little bit, maybe improve his performances a little bit, maybe become a little bit, consistent with his performances. But I really feel like this trade is far more interesting than what I initially thought. Because think about what you were expecting from Frankie Montas the rest of this year. I just kind of feel like that this is the sort of deal that Nick Krall maybe looks back on and says, man, look at this. I got this down. I know what I'm doing. I don't necessarily believe for a moment that we're supposed to love it, but it's creative. I think that this is the kind of trade that is at least a little bit of an outside the box mentality. Think about it. Would the Reds of the last couple of years really turn this around and said, yeah, no, we're going to trade to our rivals. We're going to trade a legitimate starting pitcher. And quite frankly, you can approach this from the philosophy of how on earth could the Reds give a starting pitcher to their rivals, a position that their rival has needed all season long. They've used 16 different starting pitchers, and the Reds are just going to trade them one? But the Reds have really needed something in the outfield. And while Joey Wiemer is not a proven guy, while Joey Wiemer is not a proven player, he has something to prove. He has a chip on his shoulder, and he's returning sort of home. He's not from Cincinnati, Ohio, but he graduated a Bearcat. There's something to be said about this, and there's some kind of cool story surrounding him specifically. And Jakob Junis can just give you some innings until the end of the season. I don't expect much of him. He's got a rental contract. He's going to be done at the end of this year, and he'll be a free agent. If the Reds somehow bring him back, I don't necessarily know that that's a big worry at this point, but I really feel like this is the kind of trade to get at least a little bit excited about. It's not Brent Rooker. I would have loved Brent Rooker, and y'all know that I would have loved Brent Rooker. But I really feel like this is a solid move. I have been a little bit critical of the Reds here recently. I have been a little bit not feeling the plan. But I feel like there's something to be said about this. Now, the question is, how does the roster move? Who loses a spot on this team? I have some thoughts about that coming up next. But first, we want to talk about one of today's sponsors, and that is Supply House. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Do you need help with your order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM. And order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. Thanks for joining us in this live edition of Locked On Reds, and for everybody that hung through the ridiculousness, I'm going to call it technical difficulties. The technical difficulties were me not pushing the unmute button, because it was muted. Usually Steve reminds me of those things. It's nice when he's here. Thank you for joining us here today. If you're looking for your sports news source every single day, 24/7, free on YouTube and on the Amazon Fire TV channels app, check out Locked On Sports Today 24/7, because we bring you the biggest news, opinions, and analysis of everything going on in sports over at Locked On Sports Today. Just follow it on the YouTube channel or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And thank you to our everydayers who are joining us today, breaking down the Frankie Montas trade. Frankie Montas to the Milwaukee Brewers. Who would have thought about that? And Ty France is also a Cincinnati Red. He'll be in Cincinnati for tonight's game. At least the initial reports were, so long as there's no issues with travel or anything like that. Ty France will be on the team for Tuesday night. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. The roster moves in a very interesting way with all these guys. Like, think about whose spots they take, because now you open up an ability, and it's ironic to say this because the man just homered, but you really open up an ability to at least get Will Benson some head clearing time at AAA. It really doesn't have to be that insane. Like, he doesn't have to go down for a month. He could probably go down for 10 days to 2 weeks, something like that. And then you're good to go. But I really feel like Joey Wiemer at least helps them in the outfield for some kind of future look. Joey Wiemer as a productive MLB player really hasn't developed yet. This season, he's been awful. Hasn't really hit much. Spent a lot of time in AAA. Last season, barely hit over 200. So we're not talking about a guy that's just lighting everything up. The box score does not say that he is here yet. He has not arrived. So we're looking for a player who is still trying to break out, really, if he breaks out at all. And Jakob Junis has pitched for a while. Not really that amazing of a pitcher. Not really some dude that's going to go out there and just make your bullpen better. But the fact that we had Frankie Montas, who his pitching this year has been okay. His locker room presence, and if you saw the post-game interview, his locker room presence has been unmatched. Hunter Green said that he actually kind of shed a few tears whenever he heard the news, because Frankie Montas has had a very good impact on Hunter Green in his short time here. And Frankie Montas looked completely genuine. Like, I saw no, I'm trying to think of the word. Saw no positioning in his interview. They got the chance to talk to him after the trade happened, and I really feel like he was genuine in his regret for leaving Cincinnati. I feel like it saddens him. And I kind of love that, because that speaks to the strength of this locker room. That speaks to how tight these guys are. And as much as you're not winning and you're not in a playoff spot right now and you're really not competing for the division, as much as we thought this team would, it's still good to hear that they are a tight group of guys. They're not individuals that are just trying to go out there and get theirs and the day's over and they go home. That's not what we're getting out of this. These guys are still a very tight group of players. And I feel like they still have that ability to maybe come together and do something. But the fact that Frankie Montas on the field just wasn't as good as you thought he was going to be, and Nick Krall is still able to get two major league experienced ball players out of this trade, I think that's a win. Well, we'll see exactly what Joey Wiemer turns into. We'll see if Frankie Montas leads the Brewers to a World Series or something like that. But I don't hate the trade as much as the initial report. I'm going to tell you what, and my wife can vouch for this, the roller coaster of emotions that I went through when I saw the initial report that Frankie Montas is a Brewer. My first thought was staring incredulously at Twitter and going, "What? You're doing what?" And then the return, I was like, "Oh, okay then. I'm interested. I'm cautiously optimistic about this. I'm not going to go crazy. I'm not going to lose my mind here. But Joey Wiemer, he's got to be on the roster right away. I don't think they send him to AAA immediately after getting this deal. He does have options. I mean, he barely made his major league debut, so he's got options. He's very controllable. He's on a rookie contract. The Reds really got a dude who they could make into something if they're able to develop him and get him to break out. And then Jakob Junis, he's going to be in the bullpen. You lose Frankie Montas, and I wonder here who's going to be the starter on Tuesday, because Montas was supposed to start Tuesday night against the Cubs. So is that Lyon Richardson? Do they call up Julian Aguiar, who just got to AAA, but he was the minor league pitcher of the year for the Reds last year, and he's been okay at AAA. Like, maybe does he get a look? I'd be very interested to see who starts here. But I'm okay with that deal. And let's talk briefly as well about Ty France. Ty France is a Cincinnati Red. Now, again, I did a short reaction video about this earlier today. I don't necessarily believe that it's that big of a needle mover, if at all. He's a depth guy at best. But we're talking about a former All-Star that over the course of 2 seasons, because 2020, we know, for a, evaluation point, doesn't really matter that much. But if you put together 2020 and 2021, he was really good. He played 152 games in 2021. So you put that together with 2020, we're talking over 200 ball games where he was he had an OPS plus of over 120 for over 200 ball games. Now that was 3 years ago. He's got to figure out what it is he's lost between now and then and if he can get that back. But the Reds gave up nothing for him. In fact, they even got cash back for the purchase, right? They got $1 million. The reports from Mark Sheldon that I saw from MLB.com, the Reds beat writer for MLB.com, is that the Reds will only pay $1 million of the $2 million remaining on his salary. The Mariners are actually paying Ty France to play for the Reds. And the Reds traded a catcher from Daytona who, if I told you his name, you would not know him. Maybe friend of the podcast Crazy might know him, but Andrew Salcedo, because I didn't know. I didn't know that name. Catcher Andrew Salcedo from Daytona, low A, was traded for Ty France and cash considerations. The Mariners were going to get rid of him anyway. They were going to cut him. So I'm not going too crazy about this deal. But he's depth. I'm very intrigued to see how this Montas deal plays out, because I didn't see it at all. I was shocked. And as much as it initially made me mad, part of that was just the shock value of it, the surprise value of it. Now, how do they move forward with Joey Wiemer? Because he's a guy who his bat is a question mark, but he can field. I was told by a couple of folks that knew him from watching him in the minors and stuff like that, they called him a free safety, right? They said that he is a guy that can roam the outfield and make a play for you. We don't really have that guy. I mean, TJ Friedel's kind of that guy, but his arm isn't that fantastic. But could Joey Wiemer be a dude in this outfield? I like his potential in the outfield more than I like Stuart Fairchild's. I like Joey Wiemer's potential in the outfield more than I like Jake Fraley's. I think I like Joey Wiemer's potential in the outfield almost as much as Will Benson. I think that he's got work to do. He hasn't proven anything, but he could definitely break out and make this trade look very intriguing, very interesting. There's been so many of you guys in the comments section. I appreciate you so much. This has been a lot of fun getting to do this live, and thanks for everybody that hung on through our technical difficulties earlier on in the show. The Reds also got a win on Monday night. I want to talk briefly about that because we saw a very important performance from one specific player in what ultimately was a blowout. But first, I want to tell you about another one of today's sponsors, and that is Prize Picks, because the best way to enhance your baseball watching experience for the rest of the season is with America's #1 daily fantasy sports app, Prize Picks. All you got to do is download the app and use the promo code, all lowercase, Locked On MLB, to get a first deposit match of up to $100, and you're already starting out with house money. Then you can do the easy thing, which is play Prize Picks. It's so easy to play. You pick multiple players, so at least 2 players, at least 2 stats, and you click more or less. It's that easy. It's all you got to do on Prize Picks. And you can earn up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks on one Prize Picks entry. I mean, we're talking about turning $10 into $1,000 just like that. And all you got to do is find Ellie De La Cruz and click more on steals. You can find Spencer Steer here recently and click more on total bases. He's absolutely been killing it. And maybe check out who's pitching tonight, or at least on a night that Hunter Green does pitch here in a couple of days, and click more on strikeouts. Boom, there you go. Great Prize Picks entry. Check out Prize Picks today. Again, download the app and use the promo code, all lowercase, Locked On MLB, for a first deposit match of up to $100. Because all you got to do is pick more or pick less. It's that easy. You can catch every pitch of the Reds' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Reds, and you can seriously take them with you everywhere you go. I know it's kind of weird, like if you listen to the iHeartRadio app and you get a certain distance away from Cincinnati, they cut you out. Sirius doesn't do that. You can go everywhere with the Reds. All right, speaking of which, the Reds won another series opener. I know that the statistic, and I was going to look this up, but the trade just absolutely threw me off. Frankie Montas going to the Milwaukee Brewers. I know that the Reds are amazing in series openers. They won the series opener in Tampa Bay. They've won most of the series openers this year. I think there's something like a 600 or 700 ball club almost. Like their winning percentage is 600 or 700% in 70%, 600, 60% or 70% in series opening ball games. This is why I usually like to do live shows with Steve, because I end up talking a lot. But in those cases, the Reds have absolutely been phenomenal, and they continue that here tonight. They stomped the Chicago Cubs, beat them 7-1. The Bats wake up. TJ Friedel with a big-time 3-run blast. Will Benson, who I was just advocating for a little bit of a clear your head time down in Louisville, he hit a 2-run bomb. Maybe he doesn't need to clear his head. And then you also had a huge home run from Jeimer Candelario. Spencer Steer, he hits a double, steals third, scores on a wild pitch. All kinds of great fun for the lineup tonight. They exhaled, and Ellie De La Cruz got an off day. He didn't even play. But the biggest performance for me was Carson Spires. I almost think, and I believe that there were conversations had before the game started about whether or not Frankie Montas was available. But I kind of believe that Carson Spires proved that the Reds are okay with their starting staff. Because Carson Spires this season has been really solid. He is a guy that pretty much every 5th day, you can expect him to go 5 innings. He's not going to walk a lot of guys. He's not going to give up a lot of hits. He's not going to give up a lot of runs. He's not going to be an ace. He's not going to contend for any kind of awards, but he's going to keep you in the ball game every 5th day. And that's exactly what he did here today. 5 shutout innings against this Cubs lineup. This Cubs lineup has been abysmal since the All-Star break. They've not been good all season, but they've been abysmal since the All-Star break. And yeah, Michael Busch did get a home run, but that was it. It was a solo home run for 1 run scored, and the Reds were able to win the ball game. But Carson Spires pitched phenomenal. The bullpen came in, pitched phenomenal. You had some good nights from Justin Wilson, from Lucas Sims, from Buck Farmer. They speculated in the post-game show. They were like, was this their audition for being traded? Is this the last time we'll see these guys in Reds uniforms? Honestly, if the Reds are able to swing deals like they swung for Frankie Montas, I would be okay with them seeing what they can get with trading some relief pitchers. And if you have seen, some other teams, I made this point on yesterday's show, but if you've seen how the relief pitcher market has moved, could the Reds take advantage of that? That'd be a lot of fun. But I would really find it intriguing to see Carson Spires continue this, because I saw a great tweet thread, and really I think it was just one long tweet, because if you got the check mark now, you can tweet as long as you want. Twitter's a weird thing now. But Kyle Bodie was talking about Carson Spires and how, he was an undrafted signee by the Reds. And when he did not get drafted, Kyle Bodie was knocking on the door of the Reds front office to be like, go get him. There's something about him. His work ethic, there's something about him. I want him. He didn't have good stuff. He didn't scout very well, but he worked harder than anybody. There's a blue-collar mentality about Carson Spires that I think is so easy to gravitate toward. Because if you watch him pitch, it's not as if he's got the best stuff. Nobody's ever, and maybe I'm wrong because I don't see every single tweet that the Pitching Ninja has, but I don't really think Pitching Ninja is going to make a whole lot of highlight reels about Carson Spires. But he just pitches smartly. You can see the mental game comes easy for him. And there's a comfortability with him on the mound that I think that while this probably wasn't the deciding factor in the deal, like Nick Krall probably watched Carson Spires pitch and say, all right, we got Hunter Green, we got Nick Lodolo, we got Andrew Abbott, we got Carson Spires, we got Rhett Lauder, and we got Chase Burns coming up. We might have Julian Aguiar later. Maybe Lyon Richardson can get things going. We've got a lot of young, controllable, cheap, but solid talent to work with. Maybe see what you can get for Frankie Montas. And I think that this was a good game to see how he could do, because he has faced a lot of different NL Central opponents to this point. He's faced the Pirates like what feels like a bunch of times. I think it was his first 2 outings of his career as a starting pitcher was against the Pirates. But I really think that he has shown that he is going to be a dude that can be a solid 4th or 5th starter for this team moving forward. I'd love to see if he can continue to develop. But yeah, that's been my big takeaway from the Reds win. But holy cow, as that game was going final, the Frankie Montas trade is announced. And you guys have been so fantastic in the comments section, so many different replies and so many great takes. I can't put everybody up here. It's really hard to follow along when you're solo host doing this live, but I find this very, very intriguing. I don't think that this is a salary dump. I don't think that this is any kind of punt. I think it works out as a salary dump, but I mean, I think there was a team option for next year, or maybe it was a mutual option for next year. So there's a really good chance that this is the only year that Frankie Montas was in the Reds organization anyway. And Nick Krall was able to get something good, or, something interesting out of this. But appreciate everybody for joining in. Coming up on tomorrow's show, just stick with Locked On Reds, because it feels like the Reds have some more moves in them. We're going to be with you every step of the way, because we're with you every single day talking about your Cincinnati Reds, because we're Locked On Reds every single day.